Europe today is undeniably a dream destination. Year after year, it tops the charts as the most sought-after region for people considering a fresh start. In fact, studies consistently show that a whopping 70% of the top 10 most desirable countries to move to are nestled right within Europe. And it's easy to see why. The allure of a high quality of life, robust social support systems, and promising career opportunities make it the gold standard for many seeking a better future. But while Europe may seem like the perfect place now, it wasn't always this idyllic. In fact, there was a time when setting foot on the continent was far from a dream, it was more of a nightmare. And no, I'm not just talking about the Middle Ages and the devastating spread of the Black Death, though that was certainly no picnic. Instead, we're rewinding the clock much. Approximately 19,000 years ago was perhaps one of the most inhospitable places on Earth. So, why 19,000 years ago? What's so special about that point in history? Well, this is when the last glacial maximum took place. It was a period when massive ice sheets reached their peak coverage across the globe, and Europe bore the brunt of it. Imagine this. Vast glaciers stretching over territories larger than some countries today, blanketing much of the northern and central parts of the continent. These icy giants extended as far south as modern-day Germany, reshaping the land beneath them and turning Europe into a frozen wilderness. Now, don't be fooled into thinking these glaciers were something you could just hike over, like a challenging but scenic trail. Far from it. Scientists estimate that these ice sheets were up to 2 miles thick, or about 3 kilometers at their deepest points. To put that into perspective, that's taller than Mount Everest if you stacked it twice. Traversing such a landscape? Completely out of the question. It wasn't just dangerous, it was outright impossible. And if the towering walls of ice weren't bad enough, the bitter cold made survival even more brutal. Average temperatures in Europe were a staggering 9 degrees Celsius lower than they are today. That might not sound like much, but trust me, it was enough to make large swaths of the continent virtually uninhabitable for humans. Picture waking up each day in temperatures that could freeze rivers. Solid living wasn't just difficult. It was a battle for every breath. But wait, it gets worse. As if the relentless cold and impassable glaciers weren't enough, the icy grip of the last glacial maximum also sucked the moisture out of the air, plunging much of Europe into a state of extreme aridity. The parts of the continent not buried under ice didn't fare much better. Instead of fertile valleys or lush forests, these areas transformed into what's known as the Mammoth Steppe, a vast, desolate plain that stretched as far as the eye could see. It was a biome as harsh as it sounds, mostly barren, with limited vegetation and weather that was unforgiving at best. Imagine trying to eke out a living in a land like that. No thriving cities, no cozy homes, and definitely no Mediterranean beaches. The flora was sparse and undiverse, offering little in the way of sustenance, while the weather swung from biting winds to bone-chilling cold. It's no wonder that surviving in Europe at this time was a feat reserved for the hardiest of humans. Interestingly enough, it was during the harsh conditions of the last glacial maximum that Europe became a surprising hotspot for megafaunal abundance. Despite the freezing cold and the desolate landscapes, the steppe was teeming with life, albeit life on a much larger scale than we're used to today. Giant animals, known as megafauna, roamed the land in impressive numbers, creating a wild and dangerous world. For humans, this was a double-edged sword. On one hand, it meant a greater variety of potential prey to hunt for food. On the other, it also meant living alongside and often competing with some of the most fearsome predators nature has ever produced, predators that, fortunately for us, are long extinct. Not all of these predators posed an immediate threat to humans, though some, like the European dhole or the Eurasian lynx, were formidable hunters but not significant dangers to fully grown adults. However, Europe also had its fair share of apex predators that could spell certain doom for anyone who crossed their path. Among them were several from a group not typically associated with ruling Europe today: big cats. Yes, felids, animals we now associate with warmer, more tropical climates, once thrived in the icy wilderness of Europe. If you were to ask someone today why there aren't any giant cats in Europe, they might respond with something along the lines of, well, it's too cold for them. And while that explanation might seem logical, it couldn't be further from the truth. During the last glacial maximum, Europe wasn't just home to big cats, it was practically dominated by them. Among these impressive predators, one species stood out as the king of the Ice Age, the Panthera spelaea, better known as the cave lion. Now, before we dive deeper into the cave lion's reign, let's clear up a common misconception. Many people associate prehistoric predators with the infamous Smilodon or saber-toothed tiger. However, Smilodon wasn't found in Europe during this time, it was exclusive to the Americas. But the cave lion was no less terrifying. In many ways, it was Europe's answer to the Smilodon and played a similarly crucial role as an apex predator. The cave lion was a close relative of modern lions, diverging from them around 500,000 years ago. In fact, it shared an even closer connection with another massive feline, the American lion, which holds the title as one of the largest cats to have ever lived. And size was one of the cave lion's most impressive features. These cats were massive. Fully grown individuals could weigh up to 400 kilograms or 880 pounds and measure nearly 3 meters or 10 feet in length. That's longer than most cars, and those were just the average specimens. Fossils from regions like Ukraine suggest that some cave lions reached truly monstrous sizes, comparable to today's polar bears. These super lions weighed in at over half a ton, making them some of the largest and most formidable predators of all time. But as the Ice Age wore on, fossils reveal that cave lions began to shrink in size, possibly as an adaptation to environmental changes. While this might sound like good news for humans, it didn't exactly make them harmless. Even the smaller cave lions of later generations were still about the size of modern lions, retaining their status as deadly hunters. Their power and lethality were only magnified by their physical traits. Cave lions had limbs that were longer and stronger than those of modern tigers, claws that could rend flesh with devastating precision, and teeth capable of tearing through the thick hides of their prey. And speaking of prey, the cave lion wasn't picky. Known specimens and studies confirm that these apex predators hunted a variety of megafauna, including mammoths, reindeer, and even cave bears. Yes, cave bears, another terrifyingly large animal of the Ice Age. Imagine a predator so powerful that it could take down a bear twice its size. That was the cave lion, a creature that no human, armed with nothing but primitive tools, would want to face. Yet, humans weren't entirely powerless in this brutal game of survival. They found ways to coexist with, avoid, or even confront these formidable predators. But how did they manage it? And what ultimately happened to the cave lion, a species so dominant during its time? Stick around, because this icy saga is far from over. On top of all the challenges early humans faced during the Ice Age, they also had to contend with the unnerving reality that cave lions didn't just hunt megafauna, they occasionally hunted humans too. Evidence of this comes from certain Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon skeletons, which have been found with bite marks that perfectly match the teeth of cave lions. This strongly suggests that these massive predators developed a taste for our own kind, making every encounter with them a deadly game of survival. Unsurprisingly, this fearsome cat earned itself a terrifying reputation, one that clearly resonated with our distant ancestors and left a lasting impression on their cultures. How do we know this? Well, it's thanks to the remarkable cave art they left behind. Across Europe, humans painted depictions of the cave lion on the walls of their shelters, almost as if to preserve their awe and perhaps their fear of this apex predator. What's fascinating is that these ancient drawings have actually helped modern researchers uncover details about the cave lion's behavior and appearance. For example, many of these artworks portray the cave lion without a mane, which hints that it may have looked quite different from the African lions we know today. Some paintings even depict groups of cave lions together, leading experts to believe that these creatures had a high degree of sociality, possibly hunting in prides, much like their modern relatives. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Through the discovery of well-preserved specimens, we've been able to piece together even more about this creature's physical characteristics. We now know that cave lion cubs had a yellowish-brown coat, which would have helped them blend into the steppe. As adults, they likely developed a dense, thick undercoat to protect them from the Ice Age cold, but their fur retained that same yellowish hue. And as their name suggests, cave lions have indeed been found in caves, but here's a twist. They didn't actually live in caves as often as you might think. While their remains have been unearthed in such places, they generally preferred the open steppe, grasslands, and woodlands when available. Caves were more of a temporary shelter or, perhaps, a strategic hunting ground. This fact was an unfortunate reality for humans, as caves were highly sought-after real estate for our ancestors, providing shelter from the elements and a relatively safe place to sleep. Yet even if cave lions weren't lurking in the shadows, venturing into a cave didn't exactly guarantee safety. Early humans would have still faced an array of dangers, including another formidable predator often overshadowed by its larger counterparts. The European leopard, also referred to as the cave leopard. Unlike the cave lion, this feline truly lived up to its nickname, as its remains are frequently found inside caves. These leopards likely sought out smaller, more secluded caves as their lairs, leaving the larger spaces to bigger predators like lions or bears. Why the preference for caves? It appears that European leopards used them for more than just shelter. These predators were likely quite strategic, using caves as safe zones where they could drag their prey and feast in peace. Over time, they would accumulate piles of bones and remains, creating an eerie sort of graveyard within their chosen dens. This behavior gave them an almost sinister edge, as it made them incredibly effective hunters in an already dangerous environment. And while they were smaller than many of their Ice Age contemporaries, European leopards were by no means insignificant. In fact, they posed a significant threat to humans. This isn't hard to believe when you consider the documented behavior of modern leopards, which, despite their smaller size, have been known to become man-eaters. One infamous case involved a relatively small leopard responsible for over 400 human deaths, ranking it second in history for the most confirmed kills by a big cat. Now imagine dealing with a leopard that was 40% larger than the ones we know today. That was the European leopard, a predator, equipped with greater size and power but retaining the same cunning and agility as its modern relatives. These leopards were not only fast and stealthy, but their skeletal structure reveals that they were built much like today's Persian leopards. This meant they could ambush prey with lightning speed and drag their victims away with ease, often before anyone even knew what had happened. This agility made them formidable predators, not just for humans but for other animals as well. And the problems caused by these leopards extended far beyond hunting. Their presence in caves likely forced humans to compete for shelter, resources, and safety, creating a precarious balance where survival meant constantly watching for the gleam of feline eyes in the darkness. But cave lions and leopards weren't the only predators humans had to contend with. The Ice Age was teeming with other dangers, and our story doesn't end here. There's still more to uncover about the challenges our ancestors faced and how they managed to survive in such a perilous world. When leopards first appeared in Europe around 1 million years ago, their arrival coincided with the decline of another formidable predator, the European jaguar. These larger cats, once the rulers of Europe's wilderness, disappeared entirely before the last glacial maximum, paving the way for leopards to take over. By then, leopards had become incredibly abundant, spreading across nearly all of Western Europe. Yet, as the saying goes, quantity doesn't always equal quality. Among the Ice Age predators, one creature proved that it didn't need to be widespread to leave an unforgettable mark on history. Meet the Homotherium, better known as the scimitar-toothed cat. This apex predator truly needs no introduction, but most people aren't aware of its unique place in history. By this time, it was actually the last saber-toothed predator still roaming the eastern hemisphere. For years, scientists believed Homotherium had gone extinct roughly 300,000 years ago, long before modern humans ever set foot in Europe. But this assumption was shattered with a groundbreaking discovery. In an unexpected twist, a single jaw fragment was unearthed near the North Sea, dated to just 28,000 years ago. This discovery not only revealed that Homotherium survived much longer than previously thought, but also confirmed that it coexisted with Homo sapiens, who began arriving in Europe around 45,000 years ago. While encounters between the two were likely rare, they were undoubtedly terrifying. Homotherium made its final stand in the frigid northern regions of Europe, a harsh and icy landscape that wasn't exactly inviting to humans. And honestly, that separation was probably for the best. Why? Because Homotherium wasn't just another predator, it was a human-killing machine. For hundreds of thousands of years, this saber-toothed cat preyed on early humans and their relatives with remarkable efficiency. Unlike its more famous cousin Smilodon, Homotherium had shorter, sturdier canines that were perfect for punching through bone. This made it an expert in taking down prey with precision and speed. But its deadly toolkit didn't stop there. Homotherium wasn't a solitary hunter, it operated in coordinated packs similar to modern lions. These packs allowed it to take down prey much larger than itself. And against a group of these predators, any unarmed or unprepared human stood virtually no chance. And if you thought battling a saber-toothed cat was bad enough, it gets worse. Homotherium wasn't just built for hunting humans. It was designed to take down giants. Its bear-like skeleton gave it immense strength and endurance, enabling it to tussle with animals far larger than any primate. Its favorite targets? Mammoths. Yes, you read that right. This predator specialized in taking down the massive, shaggy giants of the Ice Age. Evidence for this comes from several fossil sites where researchers found the remains of mammoths, along with damaged bones and Homotherium fossils. These discoveries paint a chilling picture of a predator that not only hunted mammoths, but also dismembered them before feasting on their remains. And just when you thought it couldn't get more gruesome, there's more. These fossil sites suggest that Homotherium wasn't merely hunting out of necessity, it had a habit of hoarding. Massive piles of bones at these sites indicate that it stockpiled its kills, possibly feeding its entire pack from a single hunt. This behavior reveals just how strategic and methodical these predators were, cementing their reputation as one of the most fearsome creatures of the Ice Age. So, you might think avoiding the frigid landscapes near the North Sea would have been a no-brainer for our ancestors. After all, who in their right mind would want to cross paths with a bear-like, pack-hunting saber-tooth? But as it turns out, danger didn't just come from the cats. While Homotherium may have ruled the icy plains, the last glacial maximum also provided a perfect environment for another predator that humans couldn't escape: bears. When it came to dominating Europe during the Ice Age, bears shared the spotlight with the great feline predators. While bears are still a part of Europe's landscape today, the sheer variety and abundance of bear species 27,000 years ago was staggering by comparison. Back then, multiple bear species roamed freely across every country and environment. Among these were the now common brown bears, but also their much larger cousins, including polar bears. Now, polar bears are mostly visitors to parts of Europe today, but during the Ice Age, they were permanent residents in places like Scandinavia, where they held their ground as some of the continent's largest predators. But these Ice Age polar bears may not have been the same ones we know today. Evidence hints at a potential Ice Age polar bear subspecies so massive and fearsome that it earned a nickname worthy of a movie villain, Ursus maritimus tyrannus, or the tyrant maritime bear. This tyrant bear is one of the most controversial figures in paleontology, as its existence is based on a single ulna, a bone in the forelimb found near London. But this isn't just any bone, it's gigantic, even by bear standards. According to a Finnish paleontologist, the bear it belonged to must have weighed an estimated 1.3 tons, making it roughly 20% heavier than the largest polar bears alive today. This would place the tyrant maritime bear among the largest carnivorous mammals to ever walk the earth. However, not everyone agrees. Some experts argue that this bone could have come from an exceptionally large brown bear instead, a species that was generally bigger during the Ice Age and known to live in the region. But whether this massive creature was a freakishly large brown bear or a true polar bear subspecies, one thing is certain: to humans of the time, it didn't matter. Any bear weighing over a ton would have been a catastrophic problem, no matter its lineage. And while the tyrant maritime bear may have been shrouded in mystery, there were plenty of less debated bears to worry about. Chief among them was the cave bear. To an Ice Age human, a cave bear might have looked like an enormous brown bear that just happened to frequent caves. But in reality, it wasn't a subspecies or descendant of the brown bear at all. Instead, cave bears had a much older lineage descending from Denninger's bear, which first appeared around 1.8 million years ago. Over time, cave bears evolved into true giants, growing to sizes comparable to today's Kodiak bears, some of the largest bears in the modern world. Their skeletal structures shared similarities with Kodiak's, and their thick, insulating fur was perfectly adapted for the frigid Ice Age climate. These features made cave bears exceptionally successful, becoming one of the most widespread and abundant animals during the last glacial maximum. But it wasn't just their size or cold weather resilience that made cave bears stand out, it was their love of caves. They didn't just visit caves occasionally, they made them their homes. Fossil evidence reveals that caves often housed hundreds of thousands of cave bear bones, leading some researchers to theorize that early humans may have witnessed herds of bears occupying caves during their lifetimes. Imagine stumbling upon a cave filled with dozens or even hundreds of these massive creatures. It would have been a sight straight out of a nightmare. Cave bear fossils are so incredibly common that humans have been aware of their existence for centuries. In fact, during the 1700s, people believed these massive bones belonged to mythical creatures like dragons or unicorns. Fast forward to World War I, and these same fossils even found a bizarre use in warfare, providing much-needed phosphate for soldiers. Despite their dominance, cave bears eventually vanished like many other Ice Age megafauna, but their legacy remains etched into the bones left behind, serving as a reminder of a time when the line between myth and reality wasn't so clear, and when a simple cave could mean the difference between life and death for an Ice Age human. With such massive numbers of cave bears roaming the Ice Age landscape, it's natural to wonder, what kind of impact did these enormous creatures have on the world around them? This question sparks a lively debate among paleontologists. On the surface, these behemoths certainly look terrifying, but were they really as ferocious as they seemed? Some evidence suggests they might have been gentle giants, living off a purely vegetarian diet. This theory comes from the fact that cave bears lack 2-3 premolars, which are usually associated with meat-eating mammals. However, new research paints a more complicated picture. Recent studies of isotopic levels in cave bear fossils suggest that their diets weren't as straightforward as we once thought. Depending on the region, some populations appeared to be strict vegetarians, with isotopic markers similar to those found in herbivores like mammoths. Meanwhile, others had a more omnivorous diet, with up to 40% of their calories coming from meat. This variability implies that cave bears, much like modern brown bears, adapted their eating habits to their environment. So, if you stumbled across one of these creatures, I'd highly recommend resisting the urge to pet it. Even if you were lucky enough to encounter one of the vegan cave bears, they were still far from cuddly. Fossil evidence shows that these bears were fierce fighters, with many specimens bearing signs of broken backs, likely the result of brutal clashes during mating season. And if that wasn't intimidating enough, There's evidence that cave bears were capable of killing multiple lions who dared to venture into their dens. In short, no matter how cute or docile they might have appeared from a distance, these massive bears were best admired from afar. And cave bears weren't the only Ice Age creatures to blend a mix of cuteness and lethality. The chilly landscapes of prehistoric Europe were also home to canids, some still familiar to us today, while others have long since gone extinct. One such species was the appropriately named cave wolf. At first glance, cave wolves might have seemed like ordinary wolves, but they were far from it. Genetic studies suggest they were closely related to Siberian wolves, but the harsh Ice Age conditions pushed them to evolve into something much more formidable. Cave wolves were built to hunt larger prey, leading to sturdier skeletons and stronger jaws, which gave them a bite force unmatched by most modern wolves. Their powerful jaws weren't just for show, they were put to good use. Cave wolf fossils reveal extensive tooth wear and damage, far more than what is seen in other wolf subspecies. This suggests these wolves regularly cracked open bones to get to the marrow inside, a behavior that's not common among today's wolves. Incredibly, these robust predators even developed a knack for hunting bears. They were known to invade caves during the winter, targeting hibernating bears in a calculated effort to exploit their vulnerability. But while bears were an occasional feast, the primary target for cave wolves was steppe bison, which made up the bulk of their diet. Every cave wolf population studied so far has shown signs of being hypercarnivorous, relying almost entirely on meat to survive. For Ice Age humans, this made them particularly dangerous. Adding to the threat was their sheer size. Cave wolves were about 10% larger than modern wolves, making them one of the most formidable predators of their time. They were widespread, thriving in mountain ranges across Europe and even the Mediterranean, adapting to a variety of habitats. Yet, despite their prominence, much about cave wolves' relationship with humans remains a mystery. That can't be said for the next Ice Age predator, though another animal with cave in its name, the cave hyena. Of all the Ice Age predators, the cave hyena might have been the one that posed the biggest threat to early humans. And that's a terrifying thought because this wasn't your ordinary hyena. At first glance, cave hyenas looked similar to the hyenas we know today, at least according to prehistoric cave art. But up close, these predators were an entirely different story. They were enormous, reaching sizes comparable to the largest modern jaguars. The bigger individuals could weigh over 220 pounds, and their low-to-the-ground build gave them incredible balance and agility. This combination of size and stability made them incredibly effective hunters. Their build wasn't their only advantage. Cave hyenas were pack hunters, and their cooperative strategies allowed them to take down much larger prey than they could have managed alone. But their most notable adversary wasn't some Ice Age herbivore, it was us. The evidence suggests that cave hyenas and humans competed fiercely for resources, and this competition may have been a defining feature of life for both species. So, whether it was a bear, wolf, or hyena, Ice Age Europe was filled with creatures that were just as captivating as they were deadly. And for early humans, every step outside was a gamble. And of course, the cave hyena wasn't just your run-of-the-mill predator. It packed an arsenal of adaptations that made it a bone-breaking powerhouse, including its signature bone-crushing bite, a trait that allowed it to shatter even the toughest bones to get at the nutrient-rich marrow inside. But nature didn't stop there. Oh no, it had to crank the dial all the way up. These predators weren't lone hunters, they were highly social animals, often roaming the Ice Age wilderness in packs that might have been as large as 100 individuals. Imagine stumbling across a coordinated group of 100 bone-crushing machines. That's enough to make even the bravest heart skip a beat. With all of this combined, the powerful bite, the sheer numbers, and the teamwork, cave hyenas weren't just successful predators. They were some of the most dominant carnivores in Ice Age Europe. In fact, they were so formidable that they actively challenged nearly every other apex predator in their environment. Bears, for instance, were among their most frequent victims, which might seem surprising considering the size and strength of bears. But cave hyenas didn't play fair, they played to win. Even lions, which many would crown as the kings of predators, met their match in cave hyenas. Fossil evidence reveals that the two species clashed often, and more often than not, the hyenas emerged victorious. Some fossilized remains of cave lions show no signs of consumption, suggesting that hyenas sometimes killed them simply because they were a threat to their dominance, not because they needed food. They weren't just predators, they were power players. Unfortunately for early humans, this same level of aggression extended to us. Both Neanderthals and modern humans found themselves locked in an intense rivalry with these fearsome predators. By the time of the last glacial maximum, Neanderthals had already vanished, but their fossilized remains tell a grim story. Human bones from both cave sites and open landscapes bear the unmistakable signs of hyena predation, cracked, chewed, and broken by powerful jaws. And this rivalry wasn't limited to hunting grounds. It extended to our homes, or what passed for homes back then. Evidence suggests that certain caves were hotly contested territories, with humans and hyenas taking turns occupying them. It wasn't uncommon for one group to drive out, or even kill, the other to claim the space. And as if that weren't enough, hyenas occasionally raided burial sites, scavenging and consuming the bodies of the recently deceased. Even in death, humans weren't safe from their jaws. The competition between humans and cave hyenas might have been so fierce that some scientists believe it influenced our species' migration patterns. One bold theory suggests that the presence of cave hyenas in Asia might have delayed humans from crossing the Bering Strait into North America. According to this idea, humans only began to populate the Americas after these predators went extinct, a testament to the impact cave hyenas had on shaping the course of history. But just because Ice Age Europe was crawling with predators doesn't mean the prey animals were easy targets. The last glacial maximum produced some of the toughest herbivores the world has ever seen, and one of the most iconic of these giants was the woolly mammoth. These ancient elephants were nothing short of legends. Comparable in size to today's largest African bush elephants, woolly mammoths weren't just big, they were built to survive. Their thick, shaggy coat served as natural insulation against the freezing temperatures, but they also acted like armor, making it harder for predators to inflict serious damage. Add to that their incredible bulk, and adult mammoths became walking fortresses, nearly impervious to attack. And then there were their tusks, massive curved weapons that were far more imposing than anything seen in modern elephants. Some of these tusks stretched over 14 feet long, and while they likely weren't used for stabbing or piercing, their curvature made them ideal for delivering devastating side swipes. These blows could cause catastrophic blunt force trauma to anything unfortunate enough to be on the receiving end. Fossils even show evidence of mammoths breaking each other's shoulders during fights, proof of just how powerful these tusks were. But tusks weren't just weapons. They were multi-purpose tools. Mammoths used them to dig through snow, move obstacles, and even shape their environment. These adaptations, combined with their size and resilience, made woolly mammoths one of the most successful species of the Ice Age. They were incredibly widespread, thriving across Europe and beyond. For humans, woolly mammoths were more than just awe-inspiring creatures, they were lifelines. Hunting them wasn't easy, but the rewards were immense. Their meat provided sustenance for extended periods, while their bones and hides were used to build tools, shelters, and even create art. In many ways, mammoths were central to human survival and culture during this time. But mammoths weren't the only herbivores that commanded respect. Another Ice Age titan, the woolly rhinoceros, was equally formidable. Though smaller than mammoths, these rhinos were still massive, with adults weighing up to 3 tons. What they lacked in size compared to their elephantine counterparts, they made up for with a weapon that was arguably even more intimidating: their horn. Or rather, their 2 horns, though it was the front one that truly stood out. Towering over half the length of an average human, this horn was a lethal spear capable of inflicting serious damage. Combined with their thick fur and bulky frame, woolly rhinos were not animals to be trifled with. Like mammoths, they weren't just survivors, they were warriors of the Ice Age plains. And let's not forget about its secret weapon, that massive, robust head built like a battering ram. This powerhouse enabled the woolly rhino to drive its colossal horn into anything that dared cross its path with jaw-dropping force. That kind of firepower might explain why it wasn't a frequent target for human hunters taking. One down would have been a nightmare even for a well-organized group. But if you thought the woolly rhino was impressive, wait until you hear about a prehistoric deer that decided size really does matter. Enter the megaloceros, the largest deer species to ever grace the planet. Now, I know what you're thinking. Deer? Really? How exciting could a deer possibly be? But trust me, if you saw this thing, you'd be floored. Picture this. The megaloceros towered at an astonishing 3 meters, 10 feet at the shoulder and tipped the scales at nearly 1 ton. For comparison, that's about the same weight as the heaviest modern horse breeds. And, oh, the antlers. These weren't your average rack. Spanning over 3.5 meters, more than 2 humans across, and weighing up to 40 kilograms, that's 88 pounds. They were a spectacle to behold. These antlers weren't just for show. They were a symbol of dominance, a tool for combat, and possibly even a survival mechanism. But here's the catch: growing those monstrous antlers wasn't easy. During their formation, the megaloceros likely consumed over 1,300 grams of protein daily. That's about as much as an Olympic bodybuilder eats in peak training. Talk about dedication to gains. Now, while the megaloceros wasn't exactly out there goring everything in sight, getting struck by one of these titans wouldn't have been a pleasant experience. Fossil evidence of direct antler combat may be sparse, but its sheer size and power make it clear this deer wasn't one to mess with. Humans, however, weren't entirely out of the picture. Archaeological findings suggest that our ancestors occasionally scavenged or hunted these beasts, though not without significant risk. And speaking of risks, prehistoric Europe was a pretty hostile place. The megaloceros was just one member of an elite lineup of formidable herbivores, and that's without diving into the meat-eating competition. Add in the likes of woolly mammoths, woolly rhinos, and a gallery of other Ice Age icons, and you've got a recipe for survival challenges that would make even the toughest modern-day explorers think twice. But the craziness doesn't stop there. Europe wasn't just home to the heavyweights. The Ice Age also brought out a parade of bizarre, smaller creatures that were deceptively dangerous. For instance, imagine encountering a giant porcupine, armed to the teeth with quills capable of skewering any unlucky predator or human that got too close. And then there was the Trogontherium, a massive, cheetah-sized beaver with teeth that could carve through wood and probably a leg like butter. Oh, and did I mention these oversized rodents had adaptations for running? Imagine being chased down by a sprinting beaver. Still, the most jaw-dropping oddball of them all has to be the Megalonhydrus, a prehistoric otter that reigned supreme on the island of Sardinia. This wasn't your average playful river otter. No, this beast stretched up to 3 meters, 10 feet, from nose to tail, making it potentially the largest otter of all time. Sardinia, during the Ice Age, was a paradise for these otters, with low sea levels creating the perfect habitat. In this isolated world, Megalonhydrus became the apex predator, dominating the waters and lands of its island kingdom with unrivaled prowess. And considering how dominant today's otters are in their environments, small but feisty predators capable of holding their own. Paleontologists believe that Megalonhydrus was an apex predator unlike anything we see in modern times. On the island of Sardinia, this 10-foot-long otter likely ruled the food chain with unmatched authority. But here's the twist. Despite its size and power, its diet was surprisingly seafood-focused. This giant spent much of its time hunting bottom-dwelling fish and crustaceans, making it less of a threat to land-dwelling creatures and more of a maritime menace. Its highly aquatic lifestyle also led to some fascinating adaptations. For example, its slightly flattened tail wasn't just for show. It acted as a powerful rudder, helping it navigate through the water with precision and speed. Imagine this enormous otter gliding gracefully through rivers and shallow seas, perfectly adapted to its aquatic domain. But here's where things get even more intriguing. Despite Sardinia's isolation, Megalonhydrus likely encountered humans. There's evidence suggesting that this species might have survived well into the Holocene, a time when humans were already spreading across Europe and its surrounding islands. So, picture this. Early humans coming face to face with a creature they'd never seen before, a giant, semi-aquatic predator with the agility of an otter and the size of a predator you'd only imagine in legends. And yet, this wasn't even the strangest thing humans had to contend with in Europe during the Ice Age. The landscape was a never-ending challenge, packed with bizarre and dangerous creatures, unforgiving weather, and let's not forget, violence from other humans. All of this combined to create a perfect storm of hardship that took a massive toll on early human populations. How massive? Well, researchers recently conducted a study that shines a light on just how dire things became. Around 30,000 years ago, just before the last glacial maximum, the peak of the Ice Age, there were an estimated 330,000 humans scattered across Europe. But when the glacial period ended, only 130,000 remained. That's a population loss of nearly 60%. To put it into perspective, this die-off was more catastrophic than the Black Death, which is often considered one of the deadliest events in human history. And it's no wonder why survival was so difficult. During the coldest points of this period, only about 36% of Europe was even remotely suitable for human habitation. That's barely over a third of the continent where life could exist. And that's not even taking into account the competition for resources or whether there was enough prey to sustain the people living there. If you weren't tough, like superhumanly tough, your odds of making it through this frozen apocalypse were slim to none. But here's the thing, humans didn't just survive, they thrived. Against all odds, they adapted to the challenges, outsmarted their environment, and outperformed every predator they faced. Humans learned to hunt virtually anything, from mammoths to megafauna like Megalonhydrus itself, mastering the art of survival. And while their growing skills eventually played a role in the extinction of many species, their resilience proved one thing. When it comes to toughness, humans might just be the ultimate Ice Age survivors.